Welcome to the Au. I'm your host, Beeflo. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite neater-eating neighborhood. They have the best selection of pizzas and pastas as well as sandwiches and salads of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday Nights Only special. One medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order after 3 p.m. and you get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but at their normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery needs, or to cater your next party. You can also call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. This show is also powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid. That's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest. He's the host of the 108 podcast, and from a South Side point of view, he's also the star of the Sunday Soak, and finally, he's the bong in this reggae song. Treasy, thanks for joining me one more time on the Au.
What's up, man? I didn't think of it, but like as the picture went up, I was like, man, should have shaved down to just a mustache for this.
I should have got back into character for this.
Oh, man. What a huge miss on my part.
What a time that was. I was thinking back to that. We used to do a lot more avant-garde shit back in the day when we were building up 108. We've become a little conservative, I got to say. You know
what? We haven't eaten a whole bunch of Twinkies in a while. I'll tell you that much.
You ate 2 at a time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, hey.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying. We're back one last time. White Sox trade with every team for 2020, end of 2024 season into 2025. It's AL East and NL East. And I'll start with our preamble. The reason we do this, a long time ago, I was listening to an interview with the legendary poker player, Phil Ivey. And the interviewer asked, paraphrasing, how would you recommend a player learn the game, get better as fast as possible? Phil said something to the effect of, buy into a game at much lower stakes than you would normally play, and then play every single hand for an hour. Try and figure out how you would play all these different hands from different situations and positions that you're normally taught not to play in. In the spirit of that, Treasy, you and I, we go through every team in Major League Baseball, and we make a White Sox trade with them. As difficult of an exercise as it is, and this year has probably been the most difficult, if I had to guess. Like out of that's the 5th year we're doing it, I think it's been the hardest of all the years.
Yeah, because I think the problem is when you're only in sell mode, right? It's difficult to make a whole bunch of trades because you only have a couple, like especially after you just sold off a bunch of pieces, you don't have much to sell, you know. So trying to figure that out tonight. This one, the divisions we go through, there was both the team that I felt like this is the most impossible team to trade with for the Sox. Yes. And then there's also the team that every year there's a team that I look at and I go, I wish I were doing this exercise with that team. And right. we had that one in this group too. So it's there's just some interesting stuff. And you always, when you start going through this, you start thinking about like, what does this team's offseason look like? Right. And I'll tell you the one that stood out to me, Beef, and it's the team that I was like, I wish I could do the trades for this team, is the Blue Jays. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, they could sell off. They could kind of get rid of stuff, but they're claiming they're not going to do that.
It's big payroll.
And you have like someone like Vladito is in his last year. I mean, he's going to be making, I don't know, he's going to make $25 million in arbitration. It's going to be a lot. But they could trade him, but they don't want him to leave, kind of. They kind of want him to stay beyond this. So it's an interesting spot.
They got a lot of guys in the last 2 years of their contract, like in the last year or the last 2 years. Yeah. And so it's like, and you're rolling out a $225 million payroll. Like that's
and you stunk last year.
Yeah, it's quite the predicament. So we'll get to them in a little bit, but yeah,
absolutely.
We get going into these trades.
Yeah, let's hit this drink real quick. Baloney says $1 is all you get. You have enough money. Congrats. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. Yeah, we knocked down the Survivor. $14,000.
Yeah, that was a big day yesterday. We'll talk about that on Thursday. We'll talk a little more on Thursday.
We're both a little tired right now, is all I'll say. A little too much Sunday fun day yesterday. So, yeah, Tracy, let's get into it. I was hoping you could start with the Braves. We'll go NL East first, so go ahead.
So the Braves were interesting to me because they are a team that's kind of cutting payroll, I would say, despite being a very good team. Jorge Soler got traded. That was a total salary dump.
Yep.
And then there was news just recently that Spencer Strider is not going to start the season. When they're saying not going to start the season 4 months out, it's not good. So
yeah. Well, I mean, he had Tommy John, I think, right? That was okay.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like you want to bolster the pitching staff, but you're also trying to cut salary. So like it's a tough spot to be in. And so Davis Martin just feels like the right kind of guy for them. They don't need a top of the rotation guy here.
Right.
A guy like Davis Martin could come in, pitch serviceably well, be a nice addition. And what I was figuring was like, they'd send back some stuff that's kind of not the top of their radar, prospect wise, right? Like a guy so David McCabe, I was gonna do him just straight up, but he did have Tommy John surgery last year. He's already back from it. He was back at the end of the year last year, but it's really not helping him play third base. But since we don't need we don't need third baseman really. He's a guy that I thought, okay, this guy's a switch hitting power hitter. He's got a good approach at the plate. Like it's something that like we don't have,
right?
And it seems like this is a good fit. And you're probably buying low because he just had surgery. He came back from surgery. Obviously wasn't like himself, so it was a little bit of a rough go at the end of the year. Yeah. And then I threw in Ellison Joseph. So Ellison Joseph's interesting to me. I see it as a difficult path for him to get to the big leagues with the Braves because they've got a good bullpen. And he's a hard thrower. Has trouble throwing strikes. One of those. Every team
story as old as time.
Every team has a whole bunch of them. The only difference here is that like he had a nice year in the minors this past year. So it seems like a guy they might be like, okay, the strikeouts are good, but the walks are still bad. But the year was nice. Maybe we could get a little bit something for him. So it seems like the kind of guy that might be on the block. So I don't know. I kind of like this one. I think Davis Martin is an interesting guy to try and trade because not a long track record of being a good starter, a short track record of being very injured. So it's tough. But I think there's teams that could definitely use a guy like him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Davis Martin, and this is like the third time we've traded him, I think, or maybe he gets traded later on. I think we traded him three or four times.
We almost traded him as many times as Crochet.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's reason behind that. Like, even though there is a shorter track record, his changeup by Stuff Plus from last year, minimum 50 innings, was third in MLB. So, like, it's kind of like he has all the things, all the parts that whatever they call it, the kick changeup or whatever. He has the parts that would allow you to become like one of these guys. And I wonder where his trade value really is because we tried to maneuver him, and I think we were reasonably fair. But he's one of those guys where, like, 3 months from now, we might look back and say, well, we way undersold him because he's a very good starter, and this all kind of came together. So I'm interested to see.
That makes sense for him to go to the Braves then, right? Because that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. But I like it because another thing we're realizing, a trend you realize when you're doing this is when you acquire any offensive player, they all fit the White Sox right now. Yes. Like when you're going to the other, like on the pitching side, it's like there's specific things that you might want to go out and get and reliever types that you might think might make sense. On the offensive side, every profile works. Every single profile possible fits because we got nothing on offense.
And it's so easy to trade because like everybody has like these first base guys that you're just like, okay, yeah, I mean like that's a very tradable asset.
Let's try it.
And he'd start immediately for the Sox.
Absolutely. All right. Next up, I have the Mets. And I'm using it, until Crochet's gone. I'm using the picture of John Holmes here. But I am sending Garrett Crochet to the Mets for Ronnie Mauricio as a shortstop, Jesus Baez, who's a shortstop third base, and Ryan Clifford, left field first base. My thesis here, I mean, I'm going and getting Ronnie Mauricio. He's the heir apparent, as Christopher Maltasanti would say, for shortstop in for the New York Mets at Citi Field. The only problem is Francisco Lindor is nowhere close to being out the door. He still looked like a stud. He's going to have up ballot MVP votes after this past year, playoff heroics. No, Lindor is still an absolute monster. They've got Mark Vientos in there. They've got Brett Beatty. It's getting crowded basically in the at the front of the lineup and in the infield for the Mets. And to me, Mauricio seemed like the best guy that I was interested in that the Mets may consider trading. There's a lot of power here. This guy is a shortstop. He's a big guy though, and there's some swing and miss in this profile. But if it maxes out, this is like 30 home runs a year. That's short. I'm kind of looking at this like Ronnie Mauricio is like Jose Valentin without the walks, basically. If it hits right, and so like that's kind of a very nice piece there. Jesus Baez probably isn't a shortstop. He probably ends up at third. There's a lot of bat to ball skills here. I saw a comp that said Miguel Andujar if he could play good defense at third. And I thought that sounds like a wonderful player I'd like to have for at least for a short period of time when Andujar was hitting like that.
I mean, is it a comparison to Andujar's defense though? Like, because like anyone is better on defense than Andujar.
I think it was just saying the quick hands and all that stuff that kind of keep going. And then finally, Ryan Clifford. Like Ryan Clifford, there's a little concerns on the profile, Treasy, in that he's real slow. He's just not a good defender at all. So you kind of lacks the athleticism. But it's like it looks like one of these like good strong side of the platoon. He's a left-handed hitter. Good strong side of the platoon with a lot of power. So think like Lucas Duda or someone like that.
Or
that
Gavin Sheets.
You're plugging in first base. That's 450 plate appearance. It's not full season because obviously they're going to need a caddy with the left-handed pitcher. But it's 25 home runs, and like it's pretty kind of clearly the power is going to play. And so to me, like when I was building crochet deals, I was like, what would I want to do if I could do anything here? What would I do? And I think like with the Mets, I'd be shocked if they're not all in on this crochet shit. Just because, Uncle Stevie, he likes to spend money, but he's already been down this path, and he knows, hey, I got prospects to cash in too. And if I want to win a World Series, I want to get past the Dodgers, he's going to have to do both this offseason. So, that's kind of the base. This is a good point from Eskridge. Mauricio was out the whole year. So he had a torn ACL. He missed the entire season. Otherwise, he probably would have been contributing on these playoff Mets. I mean, like he's of that. So like when he comes back this next year, if you were to trade for him, maybe it's 2 months in the minors and he's here. Like he's right on the cusp of the majors.
I like that. I like trying to go for something where it's like we're going to see this guy soon, right? Otherwise, you're going like I'll take the polar opposite of that. Otherwise, it's like everybody's 18, right? Like I don't really want anything in between. So I like this one. I mean, it sounds like you got us quite a few home runs here, which the Sox are in dire need of. Yeah. So I like it. I can dig it. I think that like. From the Mets side, I agree. It's probably, Mets fans would probably be like, this is a lot. But they also probably realize, like, this guy's not going to be our shortstop anytime soon.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. And they also have, like, Jet Williams. They have a lot of bats at the top of their farm system. And so, like, when I was trying to do crochet deals, I was targeting those teams. And it's funny. We had these in the hopper. And then Jeff Passan does Buster Only's show, and they talk about the teams that we're like, okay, we got some trades in here ready to go of crochet because they do make sense. It makes sense when you have a lot of bats, a team that really wants a lot of bats, and they have this stud starting pitcher that kind of proves himself. I mean, the match is so obvious. So, all right, let's move on to your Marlins trade, Treasy.
Oh,
the worst.
So this was one that was like just impossible. Like I went through like every player on the team, and like the not only are both of these teams bad, but they both have like the same exact problems, right? Like they got a bunch of outfielders that aren't very good, and they all hit left-handed, and it's like, well, I can't do a 1-for-1 trade of these guys because they just don't match up.
Right.
Like the places where they're strong. We got people like it's like Berger and Vaughn are in the same position. Like they're not gonna trade prospects for like some player off our roster because they're going to stink next year, right? Like so,
Right. They're a similar roster in that they're real pitching heavy, and they're in a similar in their contention window, Treasy, where they suck, we suck, and we're kind of moving together.
So I thought about trading the old goose head for the old Marlins home run sculpture.
Oh gosh.
But I was like, no, that's fine. I was gonna send Grady Sizemore to try and avoid what we were talking about the other night.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
But I was like, we got to figure out something. So the only thing I could figure out is if the Marlins felt that they were like a year or two ahead of the Sox, right? That they would want someone closer to the majors and would give us someone a little further from the majors who are of kind of the same caliber, right? And so I'm sending Wilfred Veras over to the Marlins because they just need right-handed outfielders. They're like they need a right-handed outfielder so bad. And we're getting Luis Cova back. Cova fits the bill too, but he's not close to the majors right now. He's a few years away, and he can play center field. Although it doesn't sound like he's going to stick in center field necessarily. So yeah, I mean, like he's a guy that we might just never see play in the major leagues. But I feel like that about Wilfred Veras sometimes. So like I don't know. I think this was like an evenish trade. Just to make a trade. I've never felt more like Jerry Dipoto. I'm just making a trade to make a trade. Like there's not a lot here. Like please feel free. Go through these rosters and show me a trade that makes sense. It's just
great, something real that the teams would actually consider doing.
It's horrible.
Well, I full disclosure to the audience. We do these as we get to them. And we do it till though we got an even amount between us. But Teresa's real busy at work right now. So like with these divisions, I got to pick the ones that I like the best. And so I tried not to leave you so many shitty ones, but that was a shitty one that I left you right there.
You know what though? I'll take it. It's always fun to just kind of like force a trade into like the worst situation possible. I'm glad I got the worst one.
It's a good exercise. I like it. I mean, Wilfred Veras has a ton of power, but there's absolutely no walks there. I mean, like I heard the fellas, and Ian Eskridge puts in the comments, have to pop Veras in the 40-man unless you want him hanging out in the breeze. I heard the Future Sox fellas talking last night about who to put in the 40-man or not. They were kind of leaving Veras on the outside just in the thought process that no one will probably nab him and put him on the roster for the entire season. But he is one of the few guys in the Sox minor leagues that has like legit power. Like there's like a lot of power there. I don't know if it's ever going to translate into a major league player, just because there's just too much chase, too much not enough walks. But who knows? But I like this trade because it's like, go ahead, let's try to get the younger version of Wilfred Veras, and maybe that one turns out as a better major league. I don't know.
Just be a little transactional here. That's all we can ask for.
Let me get to this drink from Senor Sox. He says, Wind Creek Casino now open. Oh fuck yeah, it is. We got to get out there, Treasy.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's in Crestwood.
I don't even know which direction it's in.
I think it's in Crestwood.
Okay.
Senor shared some videos. Looks nice. It looks like a nice spot. Met that out there, and maybe have dinner and a little gambling. We like doing that sort of thing occasionally, once in a while. All right, I've got the Nationals up next. And this one was also a small trade, Treasy, because they're in a similar pattern as the White Sox. They're ahead of the White Sox right now because they have a lot of their young players in the majors. And they're probably at the spot where they're starting to buy, I would think. I would think this offseason is a year where they start buying. I don't know if they buy enough to be a playoff team, but I think they're pushing in that direction. But I was looking around at them and like, oh, okay, they could use sturdy, young, athletic backstop. And so I send them Corey Lee, who I'm not enamored with Corey Lee, but I think Corey Lee is probably on major league rosters for the next 5 to 7 years, just on the strength that he's got a great arm. There's some power there. He seems pretty durable. Like backup catchers, that's kind of the profile if you can do it. And he starts to get better blocking and framing. Well, then you really have something, right? So I send him to the Nationals, and in return I get Stone Garrett. Now this is not a guitar player for Pearl Jam, okay? Stone Garrett is like pushing 30 years old, has an absolute fuck ton of power, but right-handed hitter, no real positions, play some left DHs. What's funny about Stone Garrett is we have a history. because back in 2022, the White Sox played a series at home when we thought they were still in contention. It was the end of August, and against the Diamondbacks, who were horrible. The Diamondbacks were the worst team in the majors. And in that game, Dylan Cease gave up a home run to two no-name guys. Stone Garrett was one of them, and the White Sox lost that game 3-2. It had me launch this tweet that I would not vote for Cease for Cy Young today after that performance. Two guys I can't pick out of a lineup owned us. He's got to be better. Obviously, White Sox Nation shit all over me, but I was right anyway. Regardless, I would take Stone Garrett because, as we mentioned before, the White Sox have a lot of room to plug in power hitter X who has no position and just let the guy hit bombs, right? And so I hope they choose to do that in some capacity in the offseason. If they go and get a free agent or they make a real small trade like this that, I'm perfectly honest with you, the White Sox have the backup catchers rolling up from the minors, man. Michael Turner looks like he's a guy. Adam Hackenberg had a bad year last year, but that looks like another backup catcher. So I'm not worried about the currency that is Corey Lee. We don't have enough Stone Garretts down there. Treasy?
So you said we have a history with this guy,
Yeah.
and you mentioned that tweet, but even more so, I traded for him last year with an
Yes.
So 2 years in a row, we think that we should trade for Stone Garrett. So I think they should just do it now. I think it's etched in stone. We've manifested it. It has to happen. So I'm expecting him on the team this coming year.
So I love it. Gary Kern says, love Stone Garrett. Coached my kid in Arizona when he was 13 before going back to the league. Holy shit, I didn't realize that. And then Sanger Sox is correct. Stone Garrett, baseball player or porn star. I believe Stone Garrett was one of the ones we used. That's
Yeah, I think we have
correct.
used him before, but like
Small trade, but I would like to see the White Sox be a little more transactional. I think we've talked about it in the past, Treasy. One thing we liked about Getz for the first year was he was transactional. He made a lot of moves. Not all of them worked out. Not many of them worked out. But still, at least they're trying some shit, and so I hope that they continue on that path. Now, do you want to close out this division and hit up your Phillies trade?
yeah, this was a tough one too. Yes. So Phillies. All right. So we're going to start out saying I don't think that they're going to sign Juan Soto. I think they're going to be in the running. I think they are going to try, but I think left field is going to be left a problem for the Phillies.
Okay.
I think they're trying to trot Austin Hayes out there right now, who is he's good from one side of the platoon, but not so much the other. So we'll give him the other side of that platoon, the strong side of that platoon, with Andrew Benintendi going over, and then Justin Anderson. And now Justin Anderson needs to be in this trade for us to get anything back. Because Benintendi is going over with 3 years, $50 million left on his contract.
A little bit of cheddar owed.
Most teams are going to look at that as a salary dump. They're not going to give you much for him, even if they believe that he can still hit. So you got to send over something else. And Justin Anderson fits the bill there because the Phillies are losing a few of their better relievers, right? Like, so they got to bolster the pen a little bit. And this trade takes care of kind of two things that they're missing without putting a ton of extra cash on there. And in return, we're getting Amari and Boyd. So Boyd is one of these big speedster guys, right? Like, he's a super fast guy.
Yeah.
Not a great hit tool, but he makes a lot of contact, right?
Okay.
Like, so it's not quite Billy Hamilton. Like the guy has to steal first, that kind of thing.
Right.
He can make contact. The hit tool's not great, but he can make contact quite a bit. So he barely strikes out.
Okay.
Now the other thing though, Beef, they don't know that he's could play center field because he's just not.
No.
He's fast enough.
Is there not enough arms? Is that what it is?
He's just not a good enough fielder right now.
Oh, okay.
So
All right. Yeah.
so I think it's one of those things where it's a project, and you'll need a lot of attention for this guy in the minors to get him up to speed. And then this Griff McGarry guy, incredible name. I almost just have it in here because of the name. I really like.
Trees, is this Griff McGarry at least 300 pounds or no?
He's not. He's not gigantic. He's not gigantic. But he throws real hard. And he's supposed to have really good stuff. Not so much good at throwing strikes, though. So a little bit problematic.
Little issue.
But this is a salary dump at the end of the day, right? I mean, like, you're knocking $50-something million off of your payroll. That's what the Sox would want this for. And you get 2 projects back. And, like, it could be these guys never make it to the majors. It could be, you get a little bit of run out of them. And so it depends on how motivated the Sox are to trade Benintendi this offseason. They might be saying, like, oh, no, he's going to be, a big piece of our rotation, or sorry, of our lineup, and, like, he's going to hit. We feel like that second half we really believe in it.
Right.
If they do, we'll see how that goes. But at the same time, they might just be like, man, we shouldn't have spent this money, and now we got to get rid of it.
Yeah, I was wondering how motivated they'll be, as you say, with the Benintendi contract, because not only is it like a lot of money that you're paying for a guy who's on a team that's not in the same mode, but those plate appearances are valuable to someone else that could be developing that spot. Like, that's the other thing, the opportunity cost of putting someone in left field that we could see 300, 400 plate appearances from a guy that we're not learning that information right now. So it's a tough spot, really, for him.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it this way. Beef, the team's going to stink, right?
Yep.
We're a couple of years away. Would you rather Brian Ramos be out there playing left field, or would you rather Andrew Benintendi?
Yes. I would. One of the young guys, for sure. Whichever one they want to give the glove to, just to check it out. On the other hand, though, if Benintendi's second half is real, I would prefer to watch a team that's not as incompetent as the first half White Sox on offense. So, like, I would like to see someone in the lineup that could hit a little bit. So,
well, he's only got to be good for
selfish
the
me.
First half of the season, and then you get rid of him.
Yeah, some other team, exactly.
for more than Griff McGarry, or McGarry, however you say his name.
Speaking of names you can't pronounce, let's jump over to the AL East, and I'm not even going to try, Treasy, but I like the profile here. So this is my trade with the Boston Red Sox, and I'm sending Garrett Crochet. So I did 2 Crochet trades this time, and this one's an interesting one because the Red Sox have some real high-end hitter type guys, position players. I took the one that is probably the least heralded, and the one that I have not heard is off limits for them. So I have Crochet going to the Red Sox. Coming back, I have Christian Campbell, who the defensive position is kind of uncertain at this point. But I saw my guy Dan Zimborski, after we'd already kind of put these trades down, I saw him the other day say he pulled the zips for Christian Campbell, and oh my God. So the hitting, and he's kind of come out of nowhere in the last year plus, where the where everything's off the charts. He hits for power, hits for average, walks a lot, has speed, can kind of play these positions. But it looks like someone with a well balanced profile offensively, and a perfect person to headline the trade. Even if this is a person you don't really trust in a lot of those positions, and left field ends up being where you're at with the player. Next up, I cannot pronounce the name, so I would just call him John Garcia. But it's Justin Nixon. I have no shot. But definitely a quick riser in their system. There's power, there's speed, there's arm strength. Garcia can play some center field, but it looks like a plus right fielder profile there. Again, we're looking at another hitter with potential plus on the hitting side, and this is really what the White Sox need to do. He's kind of like fringy top 100 or just off the top 100s. I don't know what it'll look like when the new versions come out, this spring. But maybe Garcia ends up popping up into the top hundreds. But he's like probably their 5th or 6th position player prospect. And then I close it out with Mikey Romero, who's second base shortstop. It's probably second base though. Let's be perfectly honest with ourselves. Small guy, a lot of bat to ball with surprising power. This is the Denzel thing. I'm leaving here with something. You got to leave here with some third piece, even though I really love the first 2 fucking pieces here. And when I'm doing these Crochet trades, I'm trying to focus on, hey, maybe these guys, because Christian Campbell is probably considered the 3rd best position player prospect. But I saw MLB Pipeline put Christian Campbell top 10. Other places I've seen Christian Campbell in the 50s and 60s and stuff. But we got to shoot high, in my opinion. You got to shoot for guys. And Campbell's basically ready for the majors as well, so you're going to get early returns on this. Treasy, what do you think of my Boston Red Sox trade?
I think as we go through Crochet trades more and more, and we see just how many teams could really use a Garrett Crochet, and how many teams are fairly deep in their farm systems. I don't think it's crazy to think that he's going to command a really nice prospect, and I think Christian Campbell's a good example of that. I don't think that we're in the era of teams like giving away everything for a player anymore. So I think like what you've got here feels right to me, right? Like you get the blue chip prospect, and then you get a couple guys that are, fringe top of the org, the farm system. Sorry, I can't speak. But those are the type of trade that I think we'll see for Crochet, and at least I hope. And like I said, I think there's enough teams out there that make that possible. So I like this one. I think that you could just insert Campbell almost in a year or so, and just be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that. I mean, they're not starved for hitters, but like, yeah, I mean, I think he plays kind of as soon as you think ready in this roster. There's no question. If you were just out of the two that I did today, Mets or Red Sox, which one do you like better so far?
I'm probably taking the Mets one.
Okay. Yep.
I'm more familiar with Mauricio. Yeah, and that's probably why.
And he's a shortstop, like a legit shortstop,
and a real shortstop.
So it covers.
It takes a lot of pressure off of Colson, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like when you look at this, it's like, okay, Colson Montgomery's going to play shortstop. Christian Campbell will probably play second base in this scenario. You could easily see with Mauricio, you could see Mauricio at short, Colson at second, and man, that sounds good. So that's
tall middle infield.
That gets you excited.
All right, Teresa, you want to hit the Yankees trade?
Oh yeah. So this is the one that I'm going to get murdered for.
Yes, you are.
So, I'm like, there's part of me that just as I do this, and I keep going back to Luis Robert because Luis Robert fits on a lot of teams, that I don't see a good path for trading Luis Robert, because I think that this is kind of like the return that you're going to get, because everyone's going to look at him and go like, well, he stunk last year, right? And like he's a good outfielder, but he's not. We can't guarantee the 30 home runs, and we can't guarantee that he's going to play more than 120 games, right? Like so, or even 100 games. So I went with one with more volume than anything.
Yes, it is.
In Yorbit Vivas. Vivas is actually a pretty nice prospect, but he's definitely not a top prospect.
No.
He's definitely not a top prospect. In the original one that I had here, I had Brando Maia as well in this, and maybe that makes this a little more complete. But Vivas, I had who comes in, he plays second base right away. Rafael Flores, the Sox could make a decision on him. Like the hit tool seems to be ready for the majors, but the catching's not, right? Like, so you could keep him down in the minors for a year, try and turn him into a catcher, or you could just give up on that and say, we're going to have a very athletic first baseman.
Right.
And then Ben Rice is major league ready right now. He had a rough go.
Came up for a bit. Yeah. He was Kevin Moss for like 2 weeks though.
Exactly. But he's just like, it's one of those things where he's a first base prospect for the Yankees, and when the Yankees have an opening at first base, they just spend money and get a first baseman. Because it's like, if you're looking at this as the Yankees and going, oh, should we try it out with Ben Rice, or should we just sign Christian Walker? Right? Like it's
exactly.
It's not a difficult decision. So he's expendable. And then Brendan Beck is a guy that he's like the idea of Brendan Beck is really good. Really good control. Decent enough stuff, but he's been hurt. He had a Tommy John surgery, and then he came back, and then he immediately had to get more surgery done on the same elbow. Oof. So he should be back this year, and like he could be a starter kind of like really quickly for the Sox, but yeah, I went volume here. Like I said, I don't love it because, like, I don't know what a team's going to be willing to give up for Luis Robert.
Yeah. Let's look at that. I looked at that. I stared at it for a long time because I was like, all right, I don't know what you're doing here. But not even the Treasy bots are going to defend you on this one, Treasy. I thought you were going to get cooked for the goddamn Crochet and Robert trade to the Padres. And most people were like, that's a little light. But no one was really booed you off the stage. This one, you got a shot at getting booed off the stage on Twitter. I'm gonna be honest with you right here because
it's
some of the volume pieces in there, But I don't think you got a top 200 prospect on there. And so people are going to look at that like, bro, you gave away Luis Robert. Even if Luis Robert never is a 5-win player again, he's gonna bounce back to 3-win player in center field. Good defense. Like I think can't be as bad as last year, right? I mean, like that's the way it's gonna look to me. So it's interesting to see. But I agree with you from the perspective of the trade market is down. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get, and I think we exercised that in this trade, and also when I did it with the Pirates. When you look at it, you're like, oh. So I think Luis Robert, he's going to play half a year at least on 35th Street this year.
I agree. Like I mean, like you look at, even if I would have added Brando to the trade, like you're still kind of like, this is just a lot of stuff, like. But you also at the same time. I just can't imagine a team going like, we're going to give you one of our top prospects for Luis Robert at this point, right? Because like the thing, like the year he had is not as concerning as just how often he's been injured. Right. And like, you're not going to give a top prospect for a guy that you don't trust to be on the field for the whole season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. Fuck.
All right. Yeah, it sucks. Like, I'm sorry. It's depressing.
Starting to break it to you. He's going to need to be healthy and great again when we can trade this motherfucker. All right. Next up is the Rays. I went a little different direction here. I don't think we've traded this guy in any of these trades. But I sent Edgar Carroll. So White Sox, one of their top prospects, Edgar Carroll, catcher. I sent him for Braden Taylor, third base shortstop, and Trey Morgan, first base. Why in God's green earth would you trade one of your top prospects? One of the things I was thinking about here, Teresi, is just the concern over the defensive profile for Edgar Carroll. And like the White Sox are probably looking at Edgar Carroll as everyday behind the plate catcher, 120 games. And I'm not sure the defensive profile is reading that just yet. I know he gets good reviews. The pitchers like him and stuff, but a lot of the stuff that I've read is they're not sure that profile has matured enough kind of with the rest of the catching duties that it is someone that you can kind of trust back there for 120 games. And so my thought was, well, a team like the Rays, they have ingenuity and they'll figure out, how to use the guy best. And what if we could just multiply Carroll, get younger in the process? And so I went and got Braden Taylor. The defense on Braden Taylor at third is so good that the Rays decided that they would try him at shortstop. And he's actually been a decent shortstop. But this is like a 70-grade defender at third. The offensive profile is good, but it's not a total stud on offense. It's below average exit velocities, but with enough loft where it's going to be 20 homers. So like it's going to be one of these guys. Yeah, he's not going to pulverize the ball, but he's going to run into enough home runs where you're going to be like, okay, that great defense plus those home runs, is totally palatable. I also get Trey Morgan. Now, Trey Morgan is the exact opposite of all the first basemen we've been trading for in this Treasy. He is a 70 glove at first. And the batting profile is going to leave you with something like James Loney. So kind of think prime Mark Grace, kind of, not obviously not that good of average. No, I mean Mark Grace had the most hits in an entire decade. Not that good, but the similar profile in it's doubles, not home runs. But it's a real fucking slick glove at first base. And so these are kind of different types of players than we've been trading for. We've been going overboard with the power. This one is a lot more defense. It's
which might be what Getz wants, right?
I mean, just kind of looking at it from that perspective. And like the Rays were the team that had that ability to offer, and also the type of team where I thought they could take Carroll and they could catch him 50 times, first base 30 times, DH and all that shit, and just kind of work around that. I really like Edgar Carroll. Let me just put that out there right now. I would like Edgar Carroll to be on the opening day roster, and if he's not even the catcher, I would fine DH him. I don't care. I want to see the bat in the lineup because I think the bat has shown through all the minors. And like to me, he was outshining Colson Montgomery the entire year and wasn't getting the street cred. But from my perspective, like, what if you could turn him around and flip him into two nice prospects? And I think you could, because the Rays could need a lot more right now. They're in a dogfight in that division. They got to get back in some way.
Yeah, I like this. I don't like trading Carroll. No. It seems like because I thought about trading him as well.
Yeah.
And it seems to me it's more our distrust of the White Sox than it is our distrust of Caro.
Yeah, I like him, right? Exactly.
You're just kind of like, are they going to use him correctly, or are they just going to ruin this poor guy?
Right.
And so it's like maybe someone who knows how to use him should use him. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm interested to see what kind of guys Gats goes after in some of these trades, because like you mentioned, right, a really good defensive first baseman who's going to hit for some average. Is that someone that Gats would prioritize? It could be.
Right.
It could be. So I'm very interested to see that. Like, the Crochet return is going to tell us a lot.
Yeah, about what directions they can go and beyond
when they're going, especially because they're going to go position player.
Right.
Like, it'd be kind of nuts if they were like, we're trading Garrett Crochet for another pitcher to try and be Garrett Crochet.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm interested to see if they go, like, what kind of players they start bringing back. It's gonna be telling of what to expect in free agency in the years following when they're actually trying to compete.
No, absolutely, and I think that's why there has been the reports that they want to get that trade done by the winter meetings or during the winter meetings, because then they can start formulating the rest of the plan around it. If you get a couple of good prospects in specific positions, those are kind of in the short term. All right, we don't want to fill those up. We want to give an open path. Now we need to go in a different direction here. So it's kind of interesting to see that. Ian Eskridge brings up in the comments, I wonder how much input Fuller will have on the returns. I assume a bunch. I assume that's why they went and did it kind of right as the offseason started, because they didn't have that mechanism. And I think that's why they were a little afraid to go in that direction in the Cease deal before the season. And then they got clobbered by the public when they went in that direction in the Freddie trade. So they probably thought, we need some help, man. We got to get some help on this. So I hope so, and I think that's why they did it. So, Treasy, go ahead. You want to hit the Blue Jays trade?
Yeah, the Blue Jays were tough to trade with. Not because they did. Not because I don't see them as a team that could trade this offseason. In fact, like I mentioned earlier, I think it would be fun to do this whole project with the Blue Jays. Yeah. Right? Like, you're trading the Blue Jays with every team. Because they have a lot of expiring contracts, or a lot of contracts that are in the last 2 years of the deal. And they were not very good this year. They have a $225 million payroll right now. So I could see them starting to shed players. And that doesn't make sense for trading with the White Sox, really. Because, we can't go out and get a guy for a year or two. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yep.
So the one guy that I saw in there is Yariel Rodriguez, because they just signed him. This might be me being a little bit like, Kenny always gets his guy. Right, because I did want Rodriguez in free agency, but he's out there. He's inexpensive. He's a reasonably good pitcher, right? Like, he's back of the rotation style guy. He's good, some good pitches. Nothing like crazy, right? He was pretty mediocre last year. He's got a good slider. The sinker's pretty good, but he doesn't really use it. So, like, maybe he uses it more in a park like the Rate. So, like, I kind of like him. And then, but to get that, you're going to have to give up something. Yeah. And I went with Samuel Zavala and Riley Gollins. So, like, these two guys that are just recently here. So you didn't even have time to get attached to them.
That's true.
But I think Zavala, just like, he feels like a guy that's with the Sox every couple of years, where you're like, oh man, this guy's got all the tools. He's going to put it together and it's going to be great. And it never happens. So why should I expect it to happen, this time? And so, like, he's a guy that I'm just kind of like, okay, let's roll the dice and trade him away. Trade him away, see what we get for him. Gollins is similar. It's like, I don't have anything against this guy, but he does seem like a reasonably good young pitcher that you could deal.
He was the afterthought, Treasy, in the Aaron.
I know,
trade.
and he might end up being
good.
He might end up being the best piece of it.
Exactly. exactly. Like he was good in the minors.
In fact, at this
Holy
point,
shit.
I think he is the best piece of
The fact that you can even bring him up and be like, this is totally plausible to move him for a guy is that's proof of that. Yeah, I'm with you with Zavala. Like if you told me next year Zavala had another tough year and you're like the White Sox are almost out on this kid, or you told me he put it together and he's shooting up the prospect rankings for the White Sox, I'd believe either of them, to be honest with you. I think that's kind of they're at the point. And that was the third piece in the Cease trade, and a reasonably risky one. So yeah, take those shots. But yeah, sometimes you gotta flip those out. I like this choice, and I think I agree. Banny will fix him. You know, you get him in with a banister, start throwing that sinker a little bit, trees, and you got something.
Well, that's it. Like I don't think there's a lot of like fixing as much as there's just like probably pitch mix and just using these pitches better. I don't think it's like the stuff like, you know, and I haven't watched him pitch a ton, but like, you know, you just look at Savant and see, you know, what these pitches look like. They look fine. Yep. Doesn't look like a lot of hard contact. You know, looks like a guy who could pitch in the major leagues for you for the next 4 years. Yeah. And it'll be, you know, late 20s, early 30s, which is a reasonable time frame to have a pitcher. So I don't know. It felt like the only thing I could trade for from the Blue Jays that would make any sense.
Beautiful. All right, let's close this up. I'm going to do my Orioles trade. This will end it for all of them. I am sending Davis Martin. Yeah, we've traded Davis Martin a lot in these trades, and I think it's reasonable. I'm expecting Davis Martin to not only be the opening day starter for the White Sox, but to have a very nice year. But in this deal, I'm trading him to the Baltimore Orioles for Dylan Beavers. 1-for-1, baby. Because the Orioles are still sitting on a treasure trove of position player prospects. Not as many as they had, mind you. They've traded off some. Some have looked like, well, maybe they're not going to be that good of a prospect. And so I think we're at the point where that team, even though their struggles offensively down the stretch and in the playoffs are well documented, when you look at roster resource and you look at their team, you realize Kyle Bradish is down. They had Corbin Burns leave in free agency. Their rotation looks a little rough, and so they are going to definitely need to add there. So if they were trying to flip out of one of these positions, I mean, this seems like a reasonable flip for them. For the White Sox, I mean, Dylan Beavers, yeah, this is right field profile. He can handle some center field, but this is like lefty with swing and miss, but a ton of fucking power. A guy who will be a good right fielder. He may need a caddy, Treasy, so he may not be a full-time hitter, but maybe it's 500 plate appearances and you find some righty to relieve him against tough lefties. But Dylan Beavers is a prospect from the Orioles I've been thirsting for. Big boy, big lefty swing, a lot of power, right fielder. We're desperate for that player. What do you think?
Thirsting for Beavers, the beef float.
By Cracky.
I mean, we need more left-handed outfielders, so that makes sense.
We don't have any of them at this point.
I mean, away from this, just thinking like, and Davis Martin may be more valuable than we previously thought.
He's one of our best players, even though we didn't know it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's what
he's definitely like a guy that stands out on the roster of like, this is a bad roster, but it stands out like, okay, this guy. We need him to be really good.
It's a problem if he's not good this year. All right. Well, that's all we've got. Treasy, thanks so much for doing some White Sox fake trades. I mean, remember, we ain't trying to be ran the show. We're just trying to understand. Anything you want to plug before you go?
I just want people to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Oh. I think we just passed 4,000 subscribers,
which is
nice. I want to get up to 5,000, man. Let's get us there. But Beef, I did want to ask you a question before we leave. Like,
yeah, go for it.
You know, like we did all these trades. What was your biggest takeaway of all of this? Like, what did you learn about the team that you find important to know?
That's a great question. I think topically we learned that there's a lot of places where other teams might have excess and aren't really fond of the prospects that end up in those buckets, like the first base only guys, the second base only guys, maybe a guy that's kind of severely missing a tool or is not as good a defender, but the White Sox have so much openings on offense that they can utilize all those things. I think the other thing I realized too is that the White Sox really have developed, like we've said it, but the White Sox really have developed a lot of pitching that's usable. Like even just like looking down the group and trying to flip out some of these guys, like you have when you're trying to add in a pitcher, you got 3-4 options of kind of reasonable guys that people would think of, and so it's interesting from that perspective. There's also a level of if Chris Gatson, he already looks like he is more creative than Rick Hahn, but if he really wants to get creative, there's room to do some interesting deals here that would be kind of avant-garde and have people like, what the fuck is that? But I think there is capacity there, and especially with some of the younger pitching, like even the ones that haven't made it to the majors yet, and flipping them out. So curious to see what it looks like. How about you?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that looking at these teams, looking at their rosters, is that the Garrett Crochet trade is absolutely going to happen. Like I think it's absolutely going to happen, and it probably is. As much as I hate to do it, it probably does make sense to do, and part of it is what you were describing in how much pitching they have. The other takeaways I've gotten: Luis Robert should not be traded.
It's tough.
Yeah, I don't see it being a good option. And then also like you pointed this out, but like the second base only prospect is so common that it should not be difficult for the White Sox to fill second base. And it has been. It has been extremely difficult for them to fill second base. Yeah. And it just seems like when guys become a second base only prospect, they just sink in the rankings. And they're like on the pay no mind list for the teams. And it's like, how are we not scooping these guys up when we can't fill this position?
Right. It's wide open. We have nothing. And all these teams got 3 and 4 of them that they don't care about. Like, all right, let's start gathering some of these up. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the things that I really feel like I've learned. I will be paying pretty close attention to the Blue Jays offseason. Like they're the team. There's always a team that intrigues me. It's like, what are they going to, they could go a whole bunch of different ways. Yeah. And all of them seem like something you want to read about. So, like, the Blue Jays, I'm going to have my eye on. That's the team that I'm definitely going to have my eye on.
Love it. All right, thanks, Treasy. Take care, brother. That was Treasy. That was great. Glad to do that again. Glad to close the books on that for the 5th time here. Next week's guest, I'm taking the week off. I deserve some time off. The Ajou, we try to run 40 episodes a season. We're at 37 right now. We'll finish out those 40 before the end of the year. But just want to thank Punky's Pizza and Pasta, as always, and all the 108 family that was up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate your smashing the like button. Comments, of course, drinks and tips. See you on Thursday. Bye.